watched a lot of film, so I'm excited to be able to play offensively, defensively, whatever role they put me in. I'm excited for that. It's a, when you go through a long off season like I have, you get to learn a lot about yourself and the company you keep. I have an extremely well support system, and I think that with everything that I learned, there's times you need to speak and there's times that you don't. I had probably how long until I talked to you guys? I was talking to you guys in February of last year. Whenever there's something that needs to be said, it'll come from Zach Lavine or my representation. There was a lot of thoughts and rumors, opinions about me, about the organization. So just know whenever it needs to come from me or them, you'll know it'll be from them. I think Rich talked one time, and this is my first talk time to you, so everything else you can take with a grain of salt, with false narratives or whatever it may be. I think going forward, the best way to handle, a lot of this stuff is I'm in a great situation, a great headspace. I'm fully healthy right now, which I don't take for granted. Anything negative that will try to pin me, the organization, rumors, drama, whatever it is, I leave that in the past. I'm focusing a lot on this camp right now, going forward on, this team and helping, learning.
Bad contract, injury prone, doesn't play winning basketball. These are just a few narratives that have been pushed towards Zach Lavine's game after last season being injury prone, not wanting to be traded to the Detroit Pistons, and sitting out the rest of the season after getting a surgery. A lot of people said that this is a contract that teams just don't want to touch and completely ignore the on-court value and his contributions to winning basketball. And I'm going to say this, today that is going to stop. Zach Lavine is one of the better shooters in the NBA, one of the most efficient shooters in the NBA, and can get his buckets with the ball in his hand and away from the basketball. The biggest deficiency in Zach Lavine's game is he plays for one of the most incompetent franchises over the past 25 years in the Chicago Bulls, without being able to properly put a good team around him to compete in playoff settings for multiple years, and continuously being okay with being the 8th, 9th, or 10th seed in the Eastern Conference year by year by year by year. So in this video, I'm going to be making the case that Zach Lavine should probably be the hottest target at the trade deadline this season and can improve multiple teams across the league. And we're probably going to talk about your favorite team. So maybe you should listen up on why Zach Lavine can be a positive on a contending basketball team. Zach Lavine has completely turned around his narrative this season. This season, he's been averaging 24 points per game on 51, 45, 81 splits on 64% true shooting. The level of off-ball play and on-ball play, the ball control that Zach Lavine possesses, and the transition play has all made him a superstar caliber guard. And just for context, there are 24 players averaging 24 points per game. Now let's talk about all the guards that are averaging 24 points per game on 64% true shooting. There is Zach Lavine, and there's SGA. That's the list. And if something concerns you about the volume of Zach Lavine scoring, like yes, he's averaging 64% true shooting on only 24 points per game, this month of January, Zach Lavine is averaging 29 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists on 64% true shooting. So over this month of January, he's been able to average almost 30 points per game on 64% true shooting, being an off-ball and an on-ball creator for the Chicago Bulls. And with this narrative that was pushed on Zach Lavine last season, some of his downfalls or some of his deficiencies as a player started to become a lot more magnetized on just because he wasn't on the floor or he was not playing the best. You start to notice that he isn't the greatest defender. You start to notice that he isn't the greatest playmaker. But people don't understand that Zach Lavine has been averaging 25 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 4.5 assists on 48, 39, 84 splits, and 60% true shooting from 2019 to 2023. That just isn't talked about. The level of efficiency all around the floor has always been there for Zach Lavine. The way that he can provide a high level of offense for teams, whether he is the main on-ball scorer or the off-ball scorer that you would like him to be, is just not talked about. And I think the biggest topic has been Jimmy Butler over the trade deadline. And I would argue Zach Lavine may provide more for an offense walking straight into any situation than Jimmy Butler can. People don't realize that Jimmy Butler has been on a massive decline over the past 2 seasons, and he has a $52 million player option next season. So if you say you're not going to pay him, then maybe he'll just take the $52 million player option. While Zach Lavine is making around 40 to mid 40s million dollars a year next season, and you're probably going to ask him to be a second or third option just like you would Jimmy Butler, but Zach Lavine's offensive game is a lot better than Jimmy Butler's at this moment. And to put even more context into this video, Jimmy Butler is going to places where he's going to be a second or third option. We've seen a lot of rumors with him going to the Phoenix Suns, to the Golden State Warriors, to the Los Angeles Lakers, to the Memphis Grizzlies. These are all places where Jimmy Butler is going to be a second or third option, where I could argue Zach Lavine would be a better second or third option offensively for teams like Memphis, for teams like Golden State, for teams like Los Angeles. For example, let's look at some of the in-depth stats of Zach Lavine's game. Zach Lavine is a 45% three-point shooter off pull-ups, and he's also a 45% catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. He was 79th percentile in pick-and-roll ball handling. He's 93rd percentile in isolation scoring with a 1.13 points per possession, which is the second highest with guys with at least 2 possessions. Zach Lavine is also an 89th percentile transition scorer, giving you about 1.33 points per possession, and that is the third highest with players with at least 3 possessions per game. And if you look at Zach Lavine's scores or buckets with assisted numbers or unassisted numbers, they're split almost down the middle, with about 147 buckets that were unassisted and 153 buckets that were assisted. So once again, we're looking at a player that is giving you 25 points per game and can be extremely portable to any situation in the NBA. And yet, teams don't want to trade for him. Teams act like that Zach Lavine is such a huge cancer and the money is so significant that they could not use the help. Well, I'm going to tell you this. Golden State, you guys could use the help. Los Angeles, you guys could use the help. So stop playing and pull the trigger. If we look back on the offseason, the Golden State Warriors weren't willing to give up Andrew Wiggins or Chris Paul to bring back Zach Lavine. And honestly, I'm not going to blame the franchises as much for not trading for Zach Lavine. I would blame the new CBA rules. These CBA rules are really strangling teams that are in first or second aprons due to them being possibly able to lose out on draft capital or just losing out on players coming in, period, because of the new CBA rules and the financial rules across the NBA. But when you have a team like Golden State who has Steph Curry and Draymond Green, 2 championship type of players, and don't want to bring in a guy that's averaging 25 points per game and fits in so well with that type of system, the CBA can be blamed, but also the franchises need to be blamed as well. Because if you look at it, I think Zach Lavine could be much more contributing to the offensive end than Andrew Wiggins to the Golden State Warriors, and you lost out on CP3 for nothing. I also took a look at how much Zach Lavine is making and how much players around him are making. So Zach Lavine is making $43 million a year. And here are some of the players that are making around the low $40 million a year. We have Lauri Markkanen, who's making $42 million a year. Rudy Gobert, who's making $43 million a year. Luka Doncic, who's making $43 million a year. Anthony Davis, who's making $43 million a year. Pascal Siakam, who's making $42 million a year. Anthony Edwards, somebody who's making $42 million a year. And Kyrie Irving, someone who's making $42 million a year. Shout out to Mars on Player's Choice. I saw him bring this up in an episode, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit more on it. I think Zach Lavine provides the same level of offensive value as a lot of guys on this list. So if you say he's being overpaid, how much is he really being overpaid by? Because $43 million doesn't look like the worst contract for Zach Lavine. I don't know if it's the fact that he's going to be making $45 million next year and has a $48 million player option the following year, or is it just the fact that he's making $43 million right now and you don't know if you want to really bank on his injury history? But ladies and gentlemen, all in all, I think Zach Lavine is one of the most underrated players in the NBA, and it's a weird situation because I don't think he's underrated by the play that he shows on the court. I think he's underrated by the contract that he has. But my argument is that a lot of teams that could really use Zach Lavine have not traded for him, and we can obviously see that the asking price is low for Zach Lavine, especially over the offseason when they only asked for Chris Paul or Andrew Wiggins for Zach Lavine. Now, I'm not saying that his trade value is still that low, but I still think that you're not going to be handing over so much to the point where you just gutting out your team for Zach Lavine. So if you ask me, Zach Lavine is the biggest trade target over the trade deadline if I'm an NBA GM. I would rather have Zach Lavine over Brandon Ingram and Jimmy Butler any day of the week if I'm the Lakers or the Warriors. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys like this type of content, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You guys can find me over at TikTok at the Buzzer Sports. You can find me on Instagram at the Buzzer Sports, and you can find me on Twitter at ATB Sports 1. I post content 6 out of the 7 days of the week, and on the 7th day of the week on Sunday, you can catch me on the Hoop Talk podcast with Mars Talk Sports. So with that being said, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace.